it's Katie Forrestal coming back with a little more reading from my book. Yesterday we got as far as Alfred Kinsey, and I'm sure you saw the deceit that came through him and how easy it is for society to be caught up in things that they don't even realize are in the background until they study them. So that's what this book is about. Going back to some of these roots and tearing them apart and bringing some truth into the picture. So we talked about Alfred Kinsey being the fraudulent scientist, and now we'll talk about Hugh Hefner being a brilliant marketeer and helping the fraudulent scientist bring the seeds of deception into society. Next section is From Science to Market. The second man is Hugh Hefner of Playboy Enterprises, brilliant marketeer and protege of Alfred Kinsey, who referred to Kinsey as the father of the sexual revolution and appointed himself to market his ideas. He once stated, "If Kinsey was the researcher, I became his pamphleteer." Hard to think of anything that's more important than to change the social sexual values of our time, and that is what I take great pride in. In 2000, Playboy magazine filed a lawsuit challenging the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which states all channels that provide primarily sexually orientated programming be scrambled between the hours of 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. This was to protect children from unknowingly coming across it. The court ruled for Playboy, saying that cable channels are not subject to the same laws as regular programming, and that there were other ways that were less restrictive to protect children, like individual responsibility between the customer and the cable provider. Hefner even went as far as to set up a foundation to further the cause of releasing obscenity into the public square under the guise of free speech. Quote, "The primary purpose of the foundation is to support organizations that advocate for and defend civil rights and civil liberties with special emphasis on First Amendment rights and rational sex and drug policies." I forgot to mention at the beginning again, if this is your first time watching, all these references are on my website, rejectpornography.com. Next section is called Softcore to Hardcore. Quote, "The very notion that a Playboy playmate image, this innocent, erotic image, should be perceived as somehow harassment or poor taste is a bizarre attitude, and the fact that such attitudes are embraced by any portion of the thinking part of society should be an embarrassment. I don't know that it is possible to ever imagine Playboy magazine to be more relevant than it was in the 50s and 60s when it literally changed the sexual climate of the country and the world. I know that some factions of society like to try to and keep morality out of obscenity, but the above statement clearly shows how influential actors have an agenda that is bigger than economic gain or bringing pleasure to the consumer. The success of Playboy led to other magazines which became more hardcore and offensive. Larry Flynt of Hustler was known to push the envelope and fight for First Amendment rights to bypass the obscenity clause also. He is known to be unscrupulous, served 6 months jail time for desecration of the U.S. flag and showing complete disrespect for court-appointed officials. In another case, he was given a sentence of 7 to 25 years in prison on obscenity and organized crime charges, yet he served only 6 days in jail. The sentence was overturned on appeal following allegations of prosecutorial misconduct as well as judicial and jury bias. Finally, in 1998, Flynt was charged with a number of obscenity-related offenses concerning the sale of sex videos to a youth in a Cincinnati adult store he owned. In a plea agreement in 1999, Flynt's corporate holding group pleaded guilty on 2 counts of pandering obscenity and agreed to stop selling adult videos in Cincinnati. He has also offered money several times to dig up dirt on Republican candidates and government representatives. I call these people narcissistic activists. Narcissists are like parasites, and parasites require hosts. Parasites suck the life out of the host with an insatiable hunger that is all-consuming unless they are detected and removed. What if the narcissist becomes an activist for a cause? A narcissistic activist would require multiple hosts in order to continue to feed. A much larger path of devastation would be left along the way. These types of narcissists are not liberals or conservatives. They are people with hardened hearts and roots of bitterness who are driven by ideological rationalizations that they must penetrate into society in order to ease the burdens in their own souls. Quote, Kinsey expressed hope that his research would spare young people in the future the same kind of, as he saw it, pointless and really crippling guilt that he experienced as a youth. End quote. Hefner worried that his masculinity was in crisis and feared the womanization of America, calling his own mother a prude. One person might release a form of activism by using law as a tool for control, enforcing constraints that do not allow for freedom or moral stance, while another might manifest his activism in a deceptive way as to seem as though he is allowing for a moral stance, but truly trying to enforce relativism for his own benefit. Narcissistic activists lead in causes that make them comfortable in their own skin and sympathetic towards others like them. Rejection fuels their lust for approval, and they may appear to have good intentions, yet secretly, maybe even to themselves, are addicted to the host and seek self-satisfaction over anything else. Narcissists do not bond, instead they attach. If the host seeks to bond, the narcissist repels and moves to another host who is open to attachment in the moment and a shallow connection. Quote, those who fear censorship of pornography conjure up the slippery slope argument that if we give in to this, we will lose our other freedoms. The liberals, from a hedonistic utilitarian point of view, that censorship harms our way of life. Further to them, the harm is not really that clear and well-defined based on scientific research. And that's the end of that quote. Narcissistic leaders can blind the eyes of their prey. What if that prey is an entire society? Relativism cannot be enforced. Relativism says that everyone has a right to their own way of living. There is no right and wrong, and some supporters of relativism believe that everyone should agree on that. That is contradictory because every person has an individual sense of right and wrong based on various factors, including upbringing, societal culture, temperament, and many other influences. Therefore, each society must place some sort of boundaries to maintain a peaceful and productive place to live. Going back to a quote that you heard in the beginning on my introduction video, if you haven't seen it, go back and take a look at it to get a better idea what this whole book's about. Quote, men are largely interdependent, and no man's activity is so completely private as never to obstruct the lives of others in any way. Freedom for the pike is death for the minnows. The liberty of some must depend on the restraint of others. To avoid glaring inequality or widespread misery, I am ready to sacrifice some or all of my freedom. I may do so willingly and freely, but it is freedom that I am giving up for the sake of justice, or equality, or the love of my fellow man. A parasite needs an unaware victim who does not have the ability to remove it, nor does it understand its power. The utopian idea of a relativistic society is flawed because individual actions always affect others. Pure relativism, in the sense of expecting others to allow one complete freedom to live one's own way with no conflict, would require isolation and ironically promotes separatism. If one so chooses to live that type of life, that is his or her choice, but it is not the role of society to make them comfortable. And when that way of living is pushed on others, it becomes unhealthy and even abusive. It is not the role of, this is a quote, it is not the role of society to make people feel included. The role of society is to maintain a modicum of peace between people. End quote. And this quote comes right from the Bible and goes right along with that quote. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. This is why we need to balance regulation with freedom, and that is our next section. Laws should only be made to force agreement in areas that are clearly detrimental to society. For instance, stop signs and red lights are essential to safe traffic flow. In a large society with many travelers, a lack of traffic laws would cause major devastation. Even if the people tried to avoid collisions, they would happen. There would also be mass confusion, making it hard to be at peace and to be productive. Signs, lights, and other devices provide clear markings to enable people to make safe choices. In America, the English language and the U.S. Constitution were meant to provide clear language as to guide the laws of the nation. The First Amendment allowed the freedom to have differences of opinion and the ability to share them, but it also had boundaries to ensure the safety of society. It was not a fully relativistic document. It protected the people against totalitarianism, yet took authority over anarchy. It allowed for the democratic motto of "We the people," but guarded against "I the ideology." The English language also had boundaries which allowed laws to be written in a clear and concise manner that would not leave much room for interpretation. Relativistic society seeks to change the English language to suit every individual's desires instead of providing a safe place to find truth and consistency. Not only is this an impossible task, it is a sure road to anarchy. It is my contention that justice and love should guide the authority of the First Amendment, and sex should not be a product to be consumed. A narcissistic movement may promote lifestyles that claim to be a shift for the bettering of humanity, yet they are experimental, not proven to be healthy. Some may call it evolution, but truly it is nothing new. It is just another wrapping on an old destructive philosophy. The hosts become the weak and disenfranchised in society, such as children, wounded, uneducated, and poor people, as well as other victims of circumstances. The parasite attached to these people through propaganda and other hosts who have been infected by the parasite. The victims are unable to remove the parasite because of lack of knowledge, lack of healing, or lack of discernment. I'm going to end here and finish this chapter in the next video. I'd like to go on, but I don't want this to be too long. So again, if this is coming from my unfinished book called 10 Reasons to Reject Pornography, and you can find all this information at rejectpornography.com. Thanks for listening.